Hello and welcome to TableTakes presented by Gen Con. My name is Christian. I'm joined today by Kristen and Emma and Derek. Hey, everybody.
Hey.
It's Friday.
Hello. Yeah, no, it's a very special day for those of us who bought tickets in advance. I'm not one of those people. I'll just go on record saying I don't get to see it till next week, whatever it is.
I sat in queue. Oh,
Yeah.
you bet I did.
But you better go hide in a cave because
I live in a
this is
cave,
your
so that's
life.
actually not too big a jump for
There
me.
you go.
Okay, we got lots to get through today,
We do.
so
Let's
let's get through it. First of
Yeah.
all, today is a big day, and not just because of that other thing that I just mentioned. For other nerds who like to wait in line, today is the day to do that if you want to do it late at night, because
Today is the first day for the War of the Spark pre-release events. So today, starting at midnight, you will be
Midnight
able to...
01.
Midnight
Midnight
01.
Saturday morning.
Saturday morning. People get very confused. They go on the calendar. They're like, is this Saturday? Is it Friday? They show up at Mox at like this morning and they're like, let me into my event. Or they think it's noon and yeah.
Yeah, it's tough.
Time is tricky.
Time
It's very
is hard.
confusing.
It is.
But yeah, so you'll be able to go to your local game store, many places all across the country, get your pre-release packs, participate in some events, and play this much anticipated set for the first time. Or if you also did not sign up ahead of time, because a lot of these things will be sold out, you can already play on MTG Arena.
No kidding.
So yeah,
It's already out.
It's already out. They were doing a streamer event for a couple of days where only certain people could get into it, but now you can do sealeds on Arena and start to put those cards into your decks.
I'm surprised they didn't
So-
wait to do that for 1201.
Well, I think it's all to build the hype, right? Like
Alright.
for a lot of people, they've been looking at these cards ever since the spoilers came out.
Yep.
They've been like building up the anticipation, so being able to play around with it a little bit before you go to the physical pre-release, which I am doing this weekend, is super fun. I will say, first impressions, the set is just as pushed as you might have expected it to be.
You've actually seen some of these cards, right? Like you've taken a
yeah.
look at them, so
I've been looking at them, my husband in particular, just every single day. He's like, have you seen the new spoilers? Have you seen this card? I'm really excited about this card because he's a brewer through and through. So
Is there a hit list of all the planeswalkers who are gonna die yet?
Well, yeah, that's the thing about the cards too. You're like spoilers for the story because it will be like picture this planeswalker and they're dead and they're falling and they're like, did they die? Like they're dead. Like they saved someone.
no, he's just sleeping in some ketchup.
Just
I
a
do that all
ketchup
the
now.
time.
Yeah.
It's good for your skin.
Yep.
Right?
That and death, really good for your skin.
So I would say like the planeswalkers, it's kind of bizarre because you're getting 6 in every because every pack has a planeswalker in it. So you're doing a sealed with 6 packs. You're gonna get 6 planeswalkers. The gods from Amonkhet are back and
Yeah.
busted because they can't exile.
The
them. They
guys
don't
from
go.
where?
The gods from Amonkhet.
Okay, I thought you said almond cat, and I'm
Almond.
like, wow, that sounds like a really interesting
Almond
card.
cat.
Tell me about that. Does it have milk?
Well, so spoiler
Like real
alert,
almonds?
For Amonkhet, all but one of the gods die.
What?
So the gods
Oh,
die, and
well.
then they come back eternalized in
As
the
mummies?
Lazatep. Yes.
Yes.
As shiny
Mummies.
blue
Mummy love.
mummy zombies. Their character type's actually zombies, not mummies, but it's cool. It's the same.
Is a mummy not a kind of zombie?
It's basically a zombie with a sense of shame.
Yes.
And actually a lot more preparation behind it.
Yep.
Yeah. So
Like you had to do all the wrapping
The
and the
embalming,
organ removal, the
yeah.
embalming.
Yeah, zombies
Plus,
are just like-
don't forget the ancient curse.
Or if you just
Yeah.
kind of roll them on a bunch of toilet
Forget
paper.
that's crucial step.
So,
it's real.
So definitely, it's fun. It's intense. I think the Wizards is definitely like pulling out of the stops for this, and they're like, "You want crazy cards? We're gonna give you just crazy,
So on that note,
powerful."
because Wizards changed like the block format, do you know how long these crazy powerful cards are going to be legal for like general play?
Yes, for standard play.
Yeah.
I think it's still about the 2 years
Wow,
for the
okay.
sets. They're doing not as many, because I think they were doing 4 sets per year, and now they're down to 3 and a core, maybe.
So we got about another year or two of superhero magic, basically.
Yes. So it
this is gonna. I
remains-
mean, this is designed to kind of shake up the paradigm a little bit, right? I mean,
Yeah. It remains to be seen if it's just going to break stuff. Like, I was playing against the Kefnet God. As I was saying, like, you can't exile it. It doesn't go to the graveyard. It goes 3 cards down. So you kill that thing, it's coming right back. And it just has crazy powerful effects. So I think it'll be fun. It'll be intense, and shaking it up, I think it's always good. Some people might be upset about it, but
Maybe we'll see a return to some play styles we haven't seen in a while, just so we can get rid of those cards that we know are coming on the deck right away. Mill decks are making a huge comeback this year.
Oh yeah, self-mill, like
Yeah,
there's all sorts of
absolutely.
fun stuff. I have no cards, and I win. Haha.
Well, sometimes, smaller is better.
Yeah.
Which brings me to the next topic. See how I did that? Working on my segues. You're
like it.
welcome.
I like it.
WizKids has announced that they are going to be putting out some new minis for their miniature game, although this one, instead of their normal Pathfinder battles, they are doing Starfinder battles, which I'm excited about because Starfinder is my jam. I've been obsessed with that game since it came out. Since they announced the release for it, I waited in line. I did not make that line waiting and get my book, but I had a nice fan give me one that day anyway because he waited in line for me.
Aw.
So I have
Privileges of power.
I have a lot of history and a lot of love for that game. So I'm glad that they're coming out with. I think the Pathfinder battle game is really fun anyway.
Yeah.
And I always need minis for my Starfinder game. So this is a way to get all of that because there's going to be a set of them, and then you'll be able to buy individuals. I don't know if they're coming. I think they're coming unpainted. Is that right?
I'm not sure.
It's WizKids, so maybe painted.
Well,
Yeah.
so it's probably again. It seems to be whatever the Pathfinder battles premise is or release format is, and I think that's randomized and painted. So I would presume they're going to do the same thing here.
Great. Then they'll look great from the moment I pull them out of their individually wrapped packages.
All excited, Link.
Yeah, that was basically my big excitement for topics today. That's where
You're just going to check out for the rest of the hour.
Well, Christian,
right.
it's been nice.
I did that. That's the extent of my particular
It was
panic.
nice having you.
It's been nice being here. Kristen's going to tell us about a completely different kind of panic, though.
I am.
Yeah. So tell me all about it.
Castle Panic.
There's a dance that goes with it,
There's
which
a
is
dance. So Castle Panic, some of you guys might have heard about it. It's actually a pretty popular game, believe it or not. So they're celebrating their 10th anniversary actually with this big box edition. Not only is it going to come with the base game, but it's going to come with the 3 expansions, the Wizard's Tower, the Dark Titan, and the Engines of War. So you get everything, all of that for $90.
Even the Dark Titan?
Even the Dark Titan.
Even the Dark Titan.
Man, that guy sounds scary, and I haven't even seen it.
It sounds like Thanos.
Yeah. Little bit.
The Dark Titan. So
No spoilers.
for those of you who don't know, Castle, stop.
Don't.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Don't put your fingers down right now.
If it's going to be half of us, can I just go home?
If you don't know, Castle Panic is a really interesting tower defense board game, actually. So tower defense is actually like my probably hands down favorite video game type.
Nice.
I know I'm a weird nerd. I know I like weird stuff.
A
But
weird nerd?
I
What
am
is
a
that?
weird
As opposed to the rest of us
nerd.
normal nerds.
One of those strange nerds I've heard about. Like, what does that mean? You watch football?
Oh, sometimes, yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
that's what it is.
Remember, she's the muscle master.
Oh, that's right. I forgot you were the
right.
muscle master.
Muscle Master.
That's all that.
Only been a few
See,
weeks.
it's-
How quickly we forget.
It's what happens when you are a nerd and also go into the Marines is that you get this weird overlap of personalities, and I'm always conflicted. Anyway,
It's okay. I have a
back-
friend who has the same problem.
Back to Castle Panic. So it's a tower defense board game.
Cooperative.
It's co-op, right? So basically, you draw cards, and which like spawns enemies that you have to deal with, right, and protect the castle from. So 1 to
Spawns
6.
enemies that you have to deal with.
Yeah.
you have to deal.
They're the
with
worst.
them.
They come at the worst time
Yeah,
possible.
I
I
heard
have
it's
the
hard.
thing to deal with the big one,
Right.
and it's all the little ones, and they're on the wrong side,
Right. Yep.
and
Right.
it's hard. It's a
Yeah, so
hard game.
you're in this one castle, and from all sides, monsters are pouring in, and you got to kind of run around and try to deal with them before they bust down your wall and get inside and ruin your castle.
It's intense.
This is a kid's
It is
game.
intense.
Yep.
This isn't even like a grown-up game. This is a children's game
well,
that has
it's
been kicking people's butt for 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
It is appropriate for all ages.
Absolutely, but I think it was definitely designed and geared towards children when it came out, and I think it still is to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And yet
It's
it-
one of those co-op games that has a very simple rule set, so you can play it with a wide variety of people.
Yeah.
All right.
Like it's really great for introducing new people to co-op games too.
Yeah.
Like if they haven't played co-op games before.
We can play with open hands and everything. It's pretty clear exactly what the actions you could do, but the experience that arises out of it, I played it recently. I had a blast. It's a very like experiential game.
See, I feel like I feel like introducing to people to co-op games should happen at like age 5.
Sure.
Yeah,
Because that's when kindergarten is, and that's when you learn how to play with others, right?
Yeah. And so many people still aren't aware that co-op games are even a thing. Like when you pitch them, when someone comes in, it's like, oh, have you played a co-op game before? Like, we play together, but how do I win? I want to win.
I mean, that's always what I ask.
That's not that person's game, as it turns out.
But yeah, I think there's more and more people are becoming aware of this option for play style. I think it's a really good, fun option.
I think there's also a lot of people who don't want to play competitive games.
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
that's why they haven't played games. So.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got an interesting dichotomy. One half wants one thing, one half wants the other thing. What if that was the same person? Hey, Derek, why don't you tell us
Which-
about what's coming out?
Yep. So for Warhammer Age of Sigmar, there's a big new release. I believe you can pre-order tomorrow, which is a whole bunch of new models for Slaanesh, the Dark Prince, She Who Thirsts.
I love nude models.
Yes, well, depending on how you paint them. So Slaanesh is the chaos god of excess, indulgence, arrogance, perfection, lust, sensation. So they have some very interesting.
So also loves nude models.
Yep.
All the fun things.
Yep. They have a bunch of new models that one half is feminine, one half is masculine. There's a lot of transgressive kind of boundary pushing with a lot of the models and the lore behind Slaanesh.
I'll tell you what, I'm glad they finally made a figure that's going to look a little bit like me at the very least.
Finally. When will they
Finally.
pay you the licensing fee for it too, though?
Almost, yeah. I'll never,
One step
I'll
at a
never
time.
see that movie.
One step at a time. So
Even characters that I can prove are based on me. I never see a dime for.
So there's a new Herald of Slaanesh. There's a new Greater Demon, new Keeper of Secrets. There's a new specific named Keeper of Secrets as well. It's a super awesome looking model that has these spike arms coming out and 2 other arms holding like a weapon, I think,
So many
a
arms.
sword.
Saturday
and then
outfit.
it's wearing
An evening outfit.
it's wearing
clubbing,
stockings, but it's a little unclear whether the stockings are flesh or skin or what.
Yeah.
Very, very.
They could be flesh or skin.
Flesh.
Yes.
Or both. Flesh skin.
So it's really really cool. There's a bunch of new stuff coming out, but it's particularly interesting because it has been a long time since Slaanesh has had something released for it, and people were kind of wondering when and how Games Workshop would step back into what could possibly be a slightly kind of risque space.
And this isn't really like a full commitment as far as Warhammer goes, since they're putting it out for Sigmar. It's for that game, but it'll have rules that are compatible with Warhammer.
So because they're Chaos Demons, you can use them in both the fantasy game and in the sci-fi game. And people are also hoping that this will hint that the Emperor's Children Legion in the sci-fi game, which are the Space Marines who kind of worship Slaanesh, they're hoping this will lead to more models and releases for them as well.
because those are the ones you were telling me about, right?
Those are the Noise Marines who are
Noise
basically
Marines.
This is the thing that would get me to play this game.
Glam Rock the Space Marines. Yeah.
Yeah, they have big guitar guns and speakers.
Yep.
Yes.
And then they wear leopard print and have awesome hair.
Yes.
Basically, yeah.
I mean, these models, with the Slaanesh ones and with the Noise Marines, it's the kind of thing that will get a whole new audience, I believe, into these games. Like, I'm looking at these models. I don't play Age of Sigmar yet, but just looking at them, I'm like, I want...
If I would have known they had
that.
guitars, I'd have been on it. That's all I'm saying. I would have been
It's not
on
if
it.
you get into Warhammer, it's when you
When.
get into
Yeah.
Well,
Warhammer.
They'll
Warhammer
get
gets
you.
into you.
As soon as I have a full-time job with health insurance, we will talk about it. Once my child is through college, we will talk about Warhammer.
It's a little.
Well, just
it's
think
a
about it.
commitment.
If you buy the Warhammer models, paint them, sell them on eBay, you could fund college.
But then I have to learn how to paint stuff.
Well, that's not my problem.
Make-
I gave you a solution.
Get your
Slaanesh
child,
will show you
small
the path.
hands, very detail-oriented.
Slaanesh is,
All right.
Make your child do it for you.
Whoa.
Slaanesh is the god of perfection, so maybe if you follow them down the path, you'll be perfect at painting your
And
minis.
where will I end up if I go down the path? Well, possibly Austin, Texas, where a
Oh,
lot of
all right.
interesting things happen. Not just the Southwest by Southwest Festival. Not only is it the only inhabitable part of Texas, but
San
Oh, I'm not
Antonio's
supposed to say
pretty
that part
nice.
out loud. But there's big news coming out of Austin, Texas right now, and not just that it's the capital, even though no one knew that. Kristen is going to tell us all about it.
I am, yeah. So turns out the Wizards of the Coast is opening a new studio in Austin, which is very, very interesting because they have stated specifically that it's not for Magic and it's not for D&D.
And that would have been my first guess. I'm like, the D&D people
Right.
and the Magic people, they work so hard, they're just sick of the weather up here, and they
No,
want to go
this
someplace a little nicer.
This is an additional studio. This is in addition to the Seattle studio. This is an additional studio. So
Now, I don't
it's-
know when the last time they opened a new studio or a major expansion was.
I don't think
Other
they
than like
have
little satellite studios
before.
to do this and that.
Well, yeah, like they partnered with people on a bunch of different stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they have taken that step themselves.
But
Right.
this is a Wizards of the Coast. Like
Straight up.
this is a straight up like second.
Wait, but
Office.
Austin isn't on a coast, is it? Are they allowed
Oh
to
my
do
gosh!
that?
It's gonna be Wizards of the Plains.
The plains.
Yeah.
And then they need Wizards of the Swamps and of the Forest.
So
Oh, boy.
it's headed by James
They're collecting a set.
Olin, which is the designer for Baldur's Gate 2, Neverwinter Nights, along with Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic and Dragon Age Origins. So Dragon Age and Knights of the Old Republic are obviously like very popular games. Like I know about them because I'm a console gamer.
Yeah, but
you know,
Baldur's Gate 1
but-
and 2 and
yeah.
Neverwinter Nights for us old school like top-down PC players
Yeah.
is
gold.
It is
Absolutely.
absolute
So
gold.
It's interesting to me that they would choose Mr. Olin to head this studio who has worked on these types of projects in the past. I mean, it says to me that they might be working on something more video game based,
Yeah.
possibly.
I mean, he does have a lot of experience with tabletop stuff because he does have a Kickstarter going right now for Odyssey of the Dragon Lords, which I believe is like a ancient Greek inspired D&D setting. So that's going right now and seems to be very successful. And as Christian pointed out when we were talking before,
almost
you know,
every game on this list is basically a conversion of tabletop rules to video games, and a very, very accurate one at that. The Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic used the actual Star Wars role-playing game that was out for 3rd edition
I
at
mean,
the time.
like, they did pretty much everything except animate dice rolling across the screen whenever you took an action.
and that's what made it feel like a game was you didn't see the dice rolling. It didn't feel like you were playing that game, but every single stat, every skill was all picked and built the same way, so it gave you a more almost realistic picture of what your Star Wars character could feasibly do
Yeah.
in the role-playing
And that's
game.
not the tactic that most video games take. Like, you know, I'm kind of paying attention to the Bloodlines 2 development right now. And, you know,
They give no craps about the tabletop rules.
well, yeah. I mean, like, I think they give a lot of craps about the feeling of it, but like, you know, they're coming up with new discipline names, new discipline powers that suit the medium of video games. But these games were always really interesting, like Knights of the Old Republic in particular. You know, I remember like picking feats. I remember like picking abilities that were.
And you pick
that
them all at the
yep,
same levels
yep,
that you normally
yep,
would. Like you get your attribute bonus at level 4. You get the exact same number of skill points you would have based on your intelligence bonus plus what class you are.
They could have just had an export because I want to go play this in person button.
But then
Yeah.
it's even weirder because, to reiterate what Christian said, it's a completely new IP. Like, that is something they've been very clear about. So, like, they have this rich IP. If they were going to do something, I mean, D&D has spawned most games and RPGs. You know, a lot of that spiritually, if not mechanically, came from Dungeons and Dragons. So
Totally.
to see this as just like, they're very clear about it being not any of the IPs that Wizards has had before. I think is very
What it suggests
interesting.
to me is that they want to do something that can span the categories.
Yeah.
So they want to make an IP and a brand identity that isn't going to be, well, this is the D&D computer game, or this is the the Fallout board game. They want to make a thing that will just exist comfortably in all those spaces that doesn't have like a history or a baggage of coming from one community or the other.
And if you're making a new IP, making that jump from tabletop to a video game is a huge jump. It's not like, hey, okay, turn this into a video
And
game.
now
I'll
it's a
see you
video
next
game.
week. You know, you're looking at years of development on this. If you're getting into that on the ground level with a new IP, knowing that you're going to go this way with video games and with tabletop, maybe a trading card game, you know, just start with a place where you can get to there, you know, reasonably. It's a fine business model as far as, you know, starting something new. I wish them well.
I'm excited to see what it is.
Super excited, for sure.
So, Obviously, most of that was just made up since it's just speculation.
Yes.
So
The
things
hottest
that are made up we definitely usually call fictional. What do we got in the way of fiction today, Emma?
So we got all sorts of fun news here. I mean,
It's a good week.
The WotC new
Also,
studio.
my Segway game.
Yes.
Super on point today.
It is on point.
Just
On
saying.
point.
Well, how long until you release the Segway game?
There. It's a match between segways and segways. Anyways, Asmodee is launching a fiction imprint. So this is big. First of all, Asmodee. I mean, I think a lot of people in the gaming space know Asmodee as like a very large company. You might recognize some games, Catan, Ticket to Ride, but you may not understand quite how much is underneath the Asmodee umbrella. So for Ticket to Ride, for example, is Days of Wonder, and Days of Wonder is part of Asmodee. Fantasy Flight is part
Z-Man
of...
Games, Space Cowboys. Like, there's a bunch of design studios or companies, many of whom were huge in their own right, that they have acquired and kind of
Yeah,
grouped
even if
together
it
in
was
the same
just
family.
the Fantasy Flight stuff, that would be a lot of material.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so they have, like, and all of these companies as well have intellectual property that outside of their own licenses. Like Fantasy Flight has Star Wars. They do Star Wars minis games, and they just have like so much richness both on their own intellectual property and then other licensed intellectual properties as well. For the starting, they're hitting the ground running. So they're looking to start monthly publications in 2020. We're not sure yet whether that will be
Monthly.
novels, whether it will be digital, it's maybe like serialized, smaller anthologies. We're not sure what that will look like, but they are committed to pumping stuff out every single month. So they're gonna get to it.
Wow. See, it looks to me like Asmodee is picking up all this, picked up all these other, companies, really, and they're just this year, since they've got so many, all the companies are putting out new products. It looks like they're just throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks in that
Yep.
first year,
We'll
and then
find
deciding what
out,
they're going to keep.
Yeah, I mean,
We'll find out, because like that's the question I have is, Asmodee has all these different games, but like we had Battleship the movie, and I'm not sure that anybody thinks that's a good path to go down.
There.
So I'm not sure they're going to have like Splendor the novel, but they do have Legend of the Five Rings that they acquired a year or two ago. They have the Android universe that was in the Netrunner card game that they have several board games for. Both of those are not only like settings that are really richly detailed already.
Yeah.
They've released a lot of fiction for those already.
Yeah.
They've had a couple hardcover novellas or short novels for L5R.
Yep.
The Netrunner card game and the L5R card game, I'm pretty sure every pack you get has a short story in it. So they're already kind of pushing it there. I'm really curious how far they're going to push that, for one, because I love both of those settings. But then two, what are they going to do for their other games that are not like are not as tied to a story?
Right.
I think is the interesting question.
So this is going to be headed by Mark Gascoigne. I practiced that name, so I want to make sure that I said it. I hope that is not too butchered. Who managed the Games Workshop Black Library. So he's got a lot of experience in fiction. For those of you who don't know the Black Library, Games Workshop
I don't. I thought it was like Black Twitter until
There-
you said something.
they have their lore world through their books, and their fiction is very built out. So right off the bat, it looks like they are making a very serious attempt on this.
They hired somebody who has a lot of experience
Yeah.
with taking a bunch of disparate games and creating a fictional world
That makes
that
it all
ties
fit
them
together.
and then
Interesting.
having a really aggressive schedule to support that.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. It could go either way. So fiction is kind of a weird market. We're going to get to later about how board games, there's more and more games coming out, and it can be harder and harder to compete in that space. But novels and fiction is not really an easier space to get into. So it's an interesting choice. But on the flip side, what we see with WotC and their lore, I've watched that trailer, that we watched it a couple weeks ago for the Spark. I just watched it on Arena because they play it before the new set releases. And I'm sitting there, again, I was crying over Liliana and just the emotion in such a
It's a
short
lot of
trailer.
depth. Yeah, I'm interested. You know what? If I had to make a guess, and here's my hot take, is that I'm going to agree with Derek. about his guess, and it's probably going to be in at least the Netrunner universe, if not also L5R.
Yeah.
I don't know about marrying those two together. That'd be super weird. But Netrunner.
So much appropriation.
Netrunner is rich with content and has a lot of opportunities to really delve into that world, right?
Yeah, those are two obvious slam dunks, I think. Although, now that you mentioned combining them, that does remind me that there was a fan fiction project back in the day when L5R first came out that was literally Cyberpunk L5R in the future. So now I have the amazing image of them.
You're all
doing
street
that
samurai from the
officially.
Rokugan Corporation.
Yeah, actually.
But also, I mean,
it's really weird.
The
It's really weird.
drama of Catan,
Real
like
niche.
there is so much in there. The robber, the tension of this, like invading my territory and stealing my stuff.
How about this?
Like,
My wood! What has happened to my wood?
My cabbages!
Twilight Struggle. They can bring in Tom Clancy and do the whole Cold War thing.
How about you
themes.
write those pitches and send them to him, and then just send us a
I feel like for
royalty?
Twilight
Yeah, maybe he'll send you a
Struggle,
signed picture or something.
See, are they looking for writers?
It's
I
just a
wanna know.
historical
Like, this
war
is-
game, though, right? Like, I feel like Twilight Struggle is that you just take a history book, put on, I don't know.
They're just going to reprint Wikipedia pages? No. Somehow I have a feeling that Gascoigne will be like,
What are you,
that's not a
Terry
good plan.
Brooks?
Let's not go that route.
So lots of good ideas.
Lots of terrible
Asmodee, I
ideas we
hope
just
you're
came up with.
tuning in today
Those are all free for your
because-
use.
Yeah.
Except the Cyberpunk one I want.
Small World, Arkham Horror Talisman.
Woman.
Paximo says, Catan, choose your own adventure book. So if you chop wood, turn to page 5.
However, I don't think we can use the
If you
phrase
chop
choose your own
sheep.
adventure.
Right.
Yeah.
Choose
So
Right.
decide your own path.
Decide your own path. Hashtag decide your own path.
Yeah. So,
So it'll be really interesting to see what happens. Again, like Netrunner and L5R, I'm all in for, and I'm very curious what they're going to do with everything else.
yeah.
You know, maybe they'll come up with some master setting that all these games had been existing in the whole time.
Oh, or
gosh.
maybe they'll find a way just to bundle them all together. Hey, guys, it's time for bundles.
Bundle time.
Bundle.
Man, I'm so on point today. Feeling good. All right. So our first bundle is from Humble Bundle, and get this, it's an Asmodee digital board game set. I know we just talked about Asmodee, so we're just going to say that they are still a thing later on in our show. It is a collection of digital board games. Some of the most popular board games that are out there that you can now play in digital format, which I'm assuming just means you lay
On your computer.
On your computer, right. So that you don't have to use your own tokens and lay them on the screen, because otherwise you have to lay the screen down.
Yeah, you
No,
need
and
the
I just-
RFID.
and I just don't
the
think that would
magnets,
work.
They stick to your screen. Just put it right up
there
there.
are
Just
ways
put the magnets right to the screen? Oh, that's a great idea.
There are
I
ways to
think
do
I
that,
will.
but they're
Don't
very
do that.
expensive.
Don't try this at home.
No, I like this advice that you're giving our viewers.
Seems bad and not right.
Look, watch, we lose one viewer next week because of it,
gosh.
because you tricked them.
Don't
He's going to
do
be so
it.
mad.
I take it
This
back.
bundle includes such classics as Ticket to Ride, First Journey, Gloom, yeah, you've heard of it, Love Letter, and Twilight Struggle. All good games.
It's
but
all the dollar tier.
That's
Yeah.
at the
$1
$1. For
for
$1,
those.
you get those games. You move up to the $7 tier, you get to add on Pandemic. What's this? I can never say this word.
Carcassonne.
Carcassonne,
Carcassonne.
Ascension, and Mysterium.
Carcassonne.
no.
So-
No. All right, you're cut off. Can we just cut her mic?
No more drinks for her.
Mysterium, though, like Mysterium and Pandemic are the two that stand out here. Just because, like, Pandemic is great.
I love
Mysterium
Pandemic.
is wonderful. I don't know how that translates digitally, but I'd be interested to try. And the thing I want to note with Carcassonne is, like, when you buy that game, if it's anything like the Xbox version, you will be entertained. You'll be able to entertain yourself for a while just making your little wooden meeple dance on the because they made the sound of the meeple hitting the cardboard.
Whatever.
Perfect.
I love Carcassonne.
Perfect.
I love Carcassonne.
So do I. I'm just talking
So if
about
you move up,
great.
that's the $7 tier. You move up to the $12 tier, you also get Scythe and the Pathfinder Adventure card game in digital form, which is super cool.
That's pretty sick.
That's a
actually.
$118 value, folks, for like $12. So
The important thing is too is whether or not you make the digital platform your primary platform for playing these games. You can freaking learn these games. Twilight Struggle. Like I
Yeah.
have Twilight Struggle. I haven't brought it to the table yet because people say the rules are less than optimal as written on the papers. So play.
It's your standard war game. I feel like historical war game.
Yeah.
Is it even considered a war game? Twilight Struggle?
I
Yeah.
think so.
Because
it's
more of a
It's
struggle
almost
game.
it's almost like board game categorizations are a little bit arbitrary, and sometimes there are ones that blur the lines.
Whoa.
Whoa.
Man, the
But
more
yeah, so
you
you can
know.
play through this, learn the rules. Like, it can be another tool that you can get for $7
Absolutely,
or
yeah.
$12. Be
Yeah,
able to-
but like-
This is so you can go and practice board games on
Yeah.
your computer
Yes.
so you
So-
can play your friends and be good at them.
Absolutely.
It's only a little sad. Go ahead and check out the Humble Bundle.
I don't think it's sad at all. I
No,
think it's
like-
actually great.
Yeah.
And then that's $12, right? For
Yeah.
all of these,
Yep.
if you want to get all these games, it's $12. I'm in.
Yes,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
it's a great
Twilight-
deal.
Twilight Struggle, Scythe,
I'm in.
and the Pathfinder Adventure card game are all very popular games.
Yeah.
That are not simple. So if you all your friends can all go learn it digitally, then you
Yeah.
can just meet up and play it, and not
Yeah.
have to spend that first session of one of you having to figure out how to tell everybody else how to play.
Or you can just play by yourself at home and not have to worry about having friends.
There-
Introverts of the world, unite
As long
separately
as-
at your
Yes,
own
like, there's a
homes.
single player mode.
As long as they have our stream on in the background, then that's fine.
Yeah.
Right. No, we're of course we'll tell them what to watch. We just don't tell them who to play with. Bundle of Holding also has something out this week. It's Fiasco and More. It's the
And more.
it's the basic Fiasco game, which I hear wonderful things about. It's a storytelling game in which you die, usually. Or bad things happen
Bad
to you.
things happen.
You all play characters and bad things happen to you, and a fiasco is formed. This does not just have the basic Fiasco game to it, though. It also comes with Carolina Death Crawl, the Radioactive Bison, which is the name of a game also, The Climb Out of Dodge, and When War Came to Colgar. The bonus will also include the Fiasco Companion and a couple of others, including the creator's favorite versions of the game, which I think is kind of a cool greatest hits list.
Yeah, there's a number of like really interesting games in there because like, these are all from Jason Morningstar, and he designed some really really intriguing games. Like Carolina Death Crawl is a card-driven storytelling game where it's a kind of a dark, like modern horror supernatural game where you're all playing, I believe, Union soldiers who are behind lines in Confederate territory, and you have all done terrible things during the war, and you kind of narrate your unit's struggle to walk back to safety, but you kind of know only one of you is going to make it. And you know, like each of you will kind of die off. Like the sins that you've committed will come back to call. When you die, you become a ghost. The ghost is then responsible for pushing the envelope further. It's like,
And then that's when you go into Mysterium.
Right?
Yep.
Can you eat your fallen comrades?
Sure.
Because I think there should be a mechanic for that. If there
I'm pretty
isn't.
sure that cements you not surviving, by the way. But basically, you'll be drawing.
No, I'll be
you'll-
nourished and warm.
No, the laws of drama dictate that you're not going to survive.
The laws
Yeah.
of drama.
Yeah, so it's very much a storytelling game of like you drawing a card, a bad thing happens, or you're reminded of a bad thing your character did before. It's a really intriguing kind of darker storytelling game thing. So if people want to kind of experiment with that, I really, really recommend it. Some other gems in there that he has, I think, are Skeletons.
Yeah.
Which is a LARP, like a small scale LARP that he wrote where he wanted to kind of
Would you say it's bare bones?
yes. He wanted to really reinforce the
I don't know why I did that. I'm
the
sorry.
sad passage of time in the dungeon. So you basically play
We
the
just lost
skeletal.
7 viewers. Christian,
No.
You play the skeletons in the dungeon who are trying to protect against adventurers, and you have to turn the lights off when there's no adventurers, and you just kind of like meditate upon the eons that pass before another adventurer comes up. Really funky stuff like that.
weird.
I think Fiasco in general, if you hadn't had a chance to check it out, it's pretty popular but niche at the same time. It's a really great.
It's like only theater kids play this game.
Yeah, it's a very improv-y,
But they all play it.
mostly one-shot type of a role-playing game, and I think it's a great one. It's very accessible, and it's a great one to get into, like between D&D campaigns or between like larger scale role-playing. It's great, just like with people who are less experienced. It has a very strong framework for exactly how you're supposed to act in this world. So if you
Yeah.
haven't had a chance to check it out, you definitely should.
The game itself has a very clear structure, but the rules are super minimal. So in a lot of ways, I find that it's a really good game to introduce people to role-playing with.
Yeah.
Because you have the structure, you build, each of the play sets comes with a list of like names and motivations and objects and locations that really drive home the theme of that playset. Whether that's Antarctica and we're going to replicate the Thing, or whether it's Vegas and we're going to replicate like
Swingers
for drugs, or if it's like suburban fiasco where like everything starts out nice and we reveal the seedy underbelly.
Seedy suburban underbelly.
Yep. So
like in The Burbs.
So you have all these kind of
Suburbia.
play sets that you can take inspiration from, but then the structure is very smooth. And so what happens is each turn, you get to decide whether you are going to narrate the scene your character is in, and you're going to start it off, and the rest of the table gets to decide how that goes. But you don't, they get to decide what happens to your character, how they deal with that situation. Or it's the reverse, where you say, I want to control my character, but the rest of the table gets to come up with a situation that they're in.
Everyone's a DM.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's a
GM,
it's a really interesting kind of balance there. It helps you kind of learn a little bit of improv. You can role play as much as you want, but you don't have to worry about character stats or rules or anything like that.
Or combat.
It's really, really intriguing. And then halfway through, you kind of throw a huge monkey wrench in the thing, which is the twist that kind of changes everything. It's a really, really good game.
Not a real monkey wrench then.
You can do that too if you want, as long as you have a sturdy table.
That's right.
So Fiasco and More, available now on Bundle of Holding.
That is correct.
Bundle of
Yeah,
Holding? Okay.
and that's all I got this week.
Great. So let's go through the Kickstarters pretty quickly. The first one, with hours left, is the 2020 gaming calendar.
Which I'm doing my happy dance about.
You don't dance happy much often.
No.
Christian's
looks
very
more like this.
excited.
Look, guys, it's a paper calendar.
Some people
Okay,
like
so-
people
some
like
people-
it.
Some people love
like
paper
it.
calendars. They
Have
can't hang computer
you
screens everywhere.
Seen the New York City taxi drivers calendar?
Oh yeah, I've got 2 of those.
Yeah?
No, I don't buy paper calendars. I thought
No.
we just went over that.
Okay, but they're coming back. Like I don't.
They're
use,
coming back.
Digital
And
ones.
that says,
No, because they're just like
That's our hot take.
After a long
Paper
drought.
calendars are making a comeback. 2019.
they're
invest
certain-
today.
Just try.
It's only an
it,
8-month
okay? All I'm
calendar, but
saying.
whatever.
Well, this one's noteworthy just because it's shots of different classic board games, and it's just the shots of the games are just gorgeous.
Yes.
So
I
even
do
if you-
appreciate
even
good
if you
photography.
even if you just like good photography of great games, it's great. And I loved it just because, like, as a kid, I would be like, I don't know what to get my dad for his birthday / Father's Day / Christmas, so have 3 calendars a year, Dad.
Also, it's just like art that changes every month.
It's
So-
just like art.
It's also
changes
art that you can
every
just
month.
flip through right there and then set it down and say, well, that was an interesting calendar.
if you're going to go for spoilers to figure out what
Yeah.
happens later in the
You
year.
can't call them spoilers, guys. They're photographs.
Anyway, the next Kickstarter
Also,
is
on the Kickstarter.
Endangered. And
Okay.
this also has hours left.
Hold on, I know about this one.
This could be about paper calendars, guys.
No.
Turn down your headphones, headphone users. This is your warning.
You're going to have to do this multiple times during these Kickstarters. This one is about a cooperative game about rescuing and keeping tigers and sea otters alive.
Are there baby tigers?
You actually do make baby tigers and sea otters.
And how do you make the babies?
Okay. So when a male tiger and a woman tiger, they love each other very much. They do this very special kind of hug.
And you kind of
You make them dance on the
you
board.
make them dance on the board.
There are meeples, yes.
Right?
Yep, and it sounds just like cardboard.
And then you have a baby tiger.
Yep. So this is a cooperative game about not just making baby tigers, but also protecting the habitat in which they live, making sure you have enough tigers to make baby tigers.
Right. Not to mention
And
a nice
then-
place for them to make the other baby
Yep.
tigers.
And then I believe you end up winning by getting the UN to declare them actually endangered and protected.
I
So
feel
it's
like
a really interesting. It's an interesting concept.
if I don't, so I'm gonna get this game. Like this is happening.
Right. Understood.
But if I don't win every time, I'm gonna be wrecked.
Like
for the
because
rest
all the
of
tigers
day.
die
Oh, they
because
die.
of you.
Wow, that's a weird.
It's like, oh gosh, at least I still have these otters left.
No, but then the side story is you run off with them into the jungle and you live
And you
with
protect
your
them
tiger
yourself.
tribe.
If that's really part of the
like
story,
a-
I will
with
also
your-
buy it. I want to live together with beautiful tigers and otters, and we
Yeah.
can all have tea
Together in
Yeah.
harmony.
This is really cool. It's following the theme of some of the games we've mentioned recently, like I'm not sure if we mentioned Holding On. That might have been before the show, or the period game. Other games like
We've
games
talked about that
with
on the show before.
meaning. Yeah, things that have like an additional layer to them, which I think is really cool.
But speaking of games that would wreck you if everyone were to die, there is Gloom of Thrones,
Oh boy.
which has 3 days left. And if you are familiar with Gloom, which we mentioned, and Game of Thrones,
Everyone
you
dies.
know what's happening.
Why
here.
It's a
not?
mashup, guys.
Why bother?
Yeah.
Really?
Not a licensed mashup, but a mashup nonetheless.
So Gloom of Thrones, this is a parody game, parodying Game of Thrones, obviously. You have all the classic families. I think it's like the Snark family instead of the Stark family.
It's
Yeah.
the
The-
umpteen
Totally
kingdoms
non-
of Easter egg.
Not infringing.
Mm-hmm.
Yep,
It's
but
fine.
so the whole premise of Gloom is that you are trying to make your family as miserable as possible and kill them, so you can have the like least points out of everybody at the table, which sounds like a very Game of Thrones kind of thing. And you basically have these kind of clear plastic
Or
cards.
just kind of only child syndrome.
These clear plastic cards that you'll lay on top of your cards as you visit miseries upon them. So you visit miseries upon your own family. You send nice things to the other family to make them happier. that
Wait,
kind
so
of
what's nice in the Game of Thrones? Because in the original Gloom, I think it's like
I think that's if
birthday
you attend a
parties
wedding
and
without
weddings.
murdering anybody, you're probably okay.
So like a wedding in the Game of Thrones universe is very different. It's not really if you give a wedding to someone, that's not a great.
I think
thing.
there was only really one bad one.
another good one.
Oh wait, no,
Only
I
real
forgot
bad.
about the yellow wedding. That was more just embarrassing, though.
So
So,
like a dragon egg or something. Like
Sure.
what's good in this universe? Cake?
Well,
Do they have cake in?
you
We'll
can
have to find out. Yeah.
Anything made of Valyrian steel is pretty good.
Okay. Yeah.
But again, the art, as you mentioned, is by Brian Pattison. He
Yes.
does D20 Monkey.
Yep.
So he's a very popular webcomic artist. A lot of you have probably seen his work. And now you can get a
and
whole bunch
Lady
more of it.
Planeswalker Society logo. a lot of
yep.
more indie games. Like does a lot of good work in the space.
Speaking of political intrigue and families, we have it
No,
works.
that absolutely tracks.
We have an extremely Derek Kickstarter of Vampire the Masquerade Heritage. Now, this is basically a legacy board game of you playing an elder vampire, turning mortals into vampires, bringing them into your family, creating a pool of minions, which with you will enact your grand plan upon history.
With all of the lore of Vampire the Masquerade.
Yep. So I believe you,
Yeah.
you pick what clan you're from. You embrace them. I think each of the there's like dozens of different characters you can embrace, and they have different art for the later periods of time they'll appear in. So you can embrace like a medieval peasant, and then they have the art of that same medieval peasant as a flower child in the 60s.
Whoa, sweet.
So there's a lot of really interesting kind of elements.
They're basically
I
like
officially
your
label this
pets.
Kickstarter as Derek AF.
Yep. But
Yeah, it
it's
sounds super fun.
yeah, it's legacy, it's political, it's backstabby. Apparently, there's only 10 rounds, so like, it seems like they took some really, really good like core mechanics of limited number of rounds, drafting, enacting plans, and then layered like legacy and vampire elements on top.
Oh, I'm in as long as they don't put it in calendar form.
Okay.
Well, there's other
Duly noted.
non-legacy elements as well. So it's not like you play the 10 rounds and then the game is done
Yep.
for you. Like there's other stuff you can do with it.
Yep. And they
Like throw it away.
yeah, like
10 rounds and you're done.
Use it to hold up something.
they have the whole missions of like going through the campaign, and I think they have like refresh packs you can play the campaign again. But they also have generic missions so you can just play the game non-legacy story if you want.
Yes.
You bite a guy, game over.
You win.
You bit a guy real hard.
Yeah.
bit him
He's
real
so
hard.
bit. And now he's a Nosferatu.
Speaking of journeys through history,
Oh, yes.
we have cheap ass games in black and white. So this is 4 days to go, and
All the way back to 22 years ago.
so this is a collection of like all the cheap ass games that they've released over the years in book format. So if anybody isn't familiar with what cheap ass games was before the revelation of TAC, for example,
I love TAC.
yeah, TAC is great.
I love TAC.
Well, then you should check this out to see
will.
where they came from.
I will.
There's very
history.
aggressive love there at the end of this.
So, like, Cheap Ass Games was one of the first companies to really make like gamer games.
Yeah.
In the sense that they were intricate, they were complicated, they were different. There was a lot going on.
But they were all in a manila envelope.
Yep. They were, and to keep costs down and to make them affordable, they were produced as cheaply as possible. Cheap ass games. So they would often come in in a manila envelope with Ziploc bags inside of some of the components, and it was never like a premium experience, but it was always a really fun
The player
game.
cards were basically just on bond paper like we're using.
Yeah.
Well, and this was before Kickstarter, which is hard to imagine a world before Kickstarter, but for a smaller indie company, like there were
seem to remember
mass
it very clearly.
market games. But to actually be a smaller indie company and releasing things was a much more rare thing back then. And they used what they could.
And that's how Kill Dr. Lucky, Lord of the Fries, Button Men, all that kind of stuff came out.
Did they do Cobalt? No, that was...
Cobalt Ate My Baby.
Yeah, that was a different group. Yeah.
So this is kind of a book that collects all of the rules in book format. You'll still have to go print it. I think all of these games are free on their website for print and play. But if you just go print it off your printer and cut it, it's going to be a pretty authentic experience. And that's kind of how it arrived.
Hey, you know what? You know when 22 years ago was, guys?
Yeah, when I was 20.
1997.
Yeah, I had just graduated.
22 years ago.
Yeah.
was
I remember
1997.
when the first cheap ass games showed up at college.
Yeah, guys, I'm super old.
Moving on.
I don't have a segue for this one, but this is probably another.
This is
point.
the one that we're all.
right.
Yeah, this is the volume down,
This
guys.
is another volume down for
Turn it
headphone
down.
users, probably.
Yeah.
So there's Animal Adventures, Tales of Cats and Catacombs.
It's like Dungeons and Dragons with kitties. Okay.
Yep. Not only is it kitties, so this is not like humanoid kitties. This is literally your house cat with a wizard hat and robe, ready to go adventuring.
I want a house cat with a.
I'm trying so hard
And-
to not scream.
Yeah.
Different
Ready?
I can't
types
even.
of
The Neck Meowmancer is the villain.
Done. Done.
has the
I quit the
horns.
show.
Yep, it's got the little horns that Tim the Enchanter wore.
And he's so mad.
He's so mad.
He's so mad.
There are some who would call me Mr. Fluffykin.
Yep.
How did you get so mad?
There's 13 different minis. It comes with the rules and how to use them in D&D. If you just want to be that one person at the table who insists on playing.
I'm being a cat.
Eric, if you're watching this, I want my Celestial Warlock to be a cat now. Can I change
Eric,
in the middle
I
of the
also want her
campaign?
Celestial Warlock to be a cat
to be
now.
a cat. And
You know what?
everyone-
I think that's something we all want.
Eric, can I vote for this too?
Yeah.
So far, it's 3
Also,
against 1, Eric.
I
All right,
have
motion
a baby
seems to have been
owlbear,
passed.
so I'm going to be a cat caring for a baby owlbear.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. All in
perfect.
favor? Okay,
All right, good.
opposed?
Sorry,
Motion
Eric.
passes.
Sorry, Eric. SOL.
So that has 5 days left. If anybody clearly wants to hop in on that one, I think my wife.
I think we all do, and I think nobody can deny that. In fact, it is undeniable.
I mean, on a slightly more reasonable level, you can also have these cats be your familiars or
No.
creatures.
Why would you do that?
Nope, that's not happening.
Yeah, I understand having a cat familiar, but I would not accept one that spoke to me.
What?
But
No,
that-
have you not
that's
watched
great.
Sailor Moon? You want the cat
Saved a
to
lot.
speak to you.
Yeah, that's how you. It's
Yeah.
your spirit guide. How
Yeah.
else are you gonna find your
That
way
was a
through the
nice cat. It
world?
wasn't like a regular cat. Most cats are just,
Speaking
Sure.
of Sailor Moon,
Dicks.
did I ever tell you that for the longest time I thought Chibi Uso was Chibi USA? I was like, there's Sailor Moon, there's Sailor Mercury, and there's Chibi USA. Okay, all right, fine. It's
Why buy a
anime.
chibi
Red, white, and blue.
anywhere else?
So, speaking of denying things,
I know, that's-
as you were
that's-
trying to
as
do.
I was trying to do.
So, Deniable Assets is a cyberpunk game on Kickstarter. It's got 6 days to go. And this one really intrigued me for a couple of reasons. It's really small, it's really focused, but you're not playing the group of Shadowrunners going on the mission. You're playing the middle manager at one of the megacorps who hired the Shadowrunners so that you could try to advance and get to the board of directors yourself. And the game explicitly says you're not your character's friend. Your character is not good.
You're just witnessing.
Yep. You are bearing witness to their folly that will inevitably lead to their ruin.
This is
I love this because it's exactly the opposite of reality. It's the ultimate power fantasy because you're watching the corporate stooge fail when in fact in real life they would just be above the law.
Also,
Well,
this is just like how internal Microsoft works.
It's entirely
I went
possible
there.
where they got the experience.
Never getting hired by Microsoft again.
Yeah, no, but if you sign it, hopefully you didn't sign an NDA.
So
If you did, you'll be shot on your way out of the studio today.
yeah, so this is a Powered by the Apocalypse game.
Yay!
The stretch goals included running in a fantasy universe with guilds. There's like a horror version, post-apocalyptic, stuff like that.
One where just all the players hug the entire time. I made that up.
Probably not that.
Probably not that.
Yeah, but I really like it just because I really enjoy games where you are like you know the downfall's going to happen.
Yeah.
You know that like Carolina Death Crawl, like you know that
I enjoy
you're marching
movies
towards
like that.
badness.
I haven't played a lot of games like that. A couple, but not a lot.
Well, maybe this one you could.
Okay.
I think a lot of people, they try to like have their power fantasy experience. You know, I'm so powerful, and this one you're weak and frail, and your character, but you're kind of separated from it. So you just like get to do all this stuff and all this like terrible. Your person's a terrible person. You get to live out that fantasy instead.
You have
That's
that fantasy, huh?
No.
Okay. No, that's.
Chat says Cyberpunk Lords of Waterdeep.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. That's actually it's a pretty good analogy.
Yep. So, another Kickstarter, I'll go with 6 days to go, is Terraforming Mars Turmoil.
And this is your favorite game, right?
Yeah, this is Derek's favorite
It is
game.
not Derek's favorite game. It is, however, the favorite game of many people I know, which is why I wanted to make sure that people knew about the Kickstarter, because like it certainly is not lacking for funding, but I always want to make sure that folks who love a game have a chance to get the Kickstarter, because I've really enjoyed backing Kickstarters that I knew were going to succeed, just because I love the game and I wanted to get involved in that process.
Yeah.
I've never done that. Oh wait, no, I spent all my money last week on Rifts, which is still out.
The rips.
So,
One mention.
That's one.
yep.
I had to fit one in.
If you like Terraforming Mars, if you like relatively complicated kind of games where you manage, and if anybody's not familiar with Terraforming Mars, you are all playing corporations who are trying to fulfill these large projects, industrial activity, all these things. You're making money, but ultimately you need to terraform Mars, and that's something that not one corporation is going to be able to do on its own. So each of you is doing a thing that's going to impact the heat of Mars, the oxygen level, the water level, terraforming things. So you're all kind of working on your own project of moving things around your little player board.
My whole job is just to put up Denny's on Mars
Yep.
in different locations.
That's
I mean,
probably
it's very-
terraformed Mars.
It's very engine building. Like you were mentioning a couple of things for it's not
Both on Mars.
super interactive, although there's some interactivity to it. The art is unique, special. We'll use the word special.
You were describing it earlier as clip art. I think unique is the opposite of what that is.
Non-unique. It has a style. that's-
Christian calling Emma out live on
I'm
television.
trying to.
I keep forgetting that people are watching.
Yeah.
It's just
I enjoy the game. You're doing an engine. You're doing an engine on an unstable platform because
Yep.
people keep messing
Like a
it
Pinto.
up, and they.
Yes. If you ever wanted to build a puzzle in a Pinto, then Terraforming Mars is
Yes.
right for you.
it's like
Perfect
building
way
a
to
jigsaw
describe
puzzle
it.
in a Pinto.
Yep.
All right. While off-roading.
Hopefully they will put that on the box next and they'll just credit Christian.
Yeah.
It's like yeah.
Marketing ideas just every
Yeah,
week
just
come
Yep.
out of
Hopefully,
your
if they
mouth.
quote me, they'll also say, TableTakes presented by
I think
Jack
there's a
Allen.
reason we're on this show and not marketing executives for Asmodee.
Right.
No.
Right. Yeah.
Or-
All right.
So the next project, the last Kickstarter, also has 6 days to go. This is another book of monsters for D&D. But the reason that I'm mentioning is they had done a previous one, and both of them are themed around something. So it's not just here's a bunch of monsters. The previous one they had done was hordes. So it was like savage humanoids, goblins, kobolds, things like that.
Orcs and bugbears.
Yep.
Yeah.
This one is all about
Bumboos.
cursed monsters. So mummies, like we
Mummies!
but also like
a bit of a mummy's boy.
lycanthropes,
Mummies don't get
vampires.
enough love.
They don't.
Sorry, go
You should
ahead.
always love your mummy.
Yeah.
So vampires,
boy.
lycanthropes,
Yep.
cursed undead
wights,
of any
you know,
kind.
Will o' the Wisps, skeletons.
So there's a lot of really neat stuff in there. I just like it because I like
the whites.
collections of monsters that are themed. And one of the things that they're doing is they're
monsters.
trying to broaden the number of stat blocks, the level range that you can use these monsters on, so that you can bring them into other adventures.
I like the idea of themed monsters, but my mind, of course, goes to the wrong place. I think of all of the regular monsters, but they're like all wearing Batman hats or something.
Or like just Disney hats.
yeah.
Because
It's like
Disney owns everything.
It's an ugly sweater party for all of the monsters of Dungeons and Dragons.
Do you have any idea how popular the
Themed
ugly sweater
monsters.
party would? It would be almost as popular as the Cats and Catacombs.
Yeah, no, the Tomb of Horrors, just with everything in ugly
What if
sweaters.
the cats were wearing the sweaters?
Can I back this right now?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, you've got your computer that they let you have that because
They
you're
let
the
us.
boss.
Backing.
Those are the Kickstarters for this week, which brings us.
To topics.
We're doing a topic.
We got something to talk about, and what we're going to be talking about today is, of course, the game industry, not just in general, but their numbers. We're going to talk some money.
Yeah, so the industry numbers, $1.5 billion in hobby game sales in 2018, which is actually slightly less than 2017.
It's
so,
the first time that we've seen a decline, or at least ICV2, who we're getting these numbers from.
Since
it's the first-
2013,
Yep, it's the first
yeah.
time they've had a decline in, what is that, like 6 years?
6 years.
Is it? And it's not necessarily a full decline, right?
Yeah.
It's,
So they're like the tabletop industry has been on a tear. Like it's been the meteoric climb. A lot of people
it's been good
have-
enough to where we get a show about it.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
yeah.
There's
a
an
lot
entire news show on Twitch, I hear,
we
Really? What's it about?
devoted to
It's called
tabletop
TableTakes.
Oh,
news.
sweet.
Presented by Gen Con.
I should go check that out.
Exclusively.
So in Gen Con, I mean, has really been riding this wave. A lot of people have been calling out a potential bubble with this. Like the number of games released just at Essen, just thousands and thousands of new board games. And it's just been growing so fast that a lot of people had called and said that it was necessary at some point that there would be
Some
a
sort of
correction.
Yeah. Well, so like
Exactly.
to put some of these numbers in perspective too, 2018, was not as high as 2017, but it was still higher than all previous years.
Yeah, it was like a 3% drop.
And it's still double the size sales volume that it was in 2013. So it's still ridiculous growth.
It's not worth necessarily complaining about because we're talking about, the decline has happened in the collectible games, right?
Yes.
Which are,
Yeah, tell us more about that.
what's collectible games?
Collectible
What-
card games, CCGs, TCGs, Magic the Gathering, minis games.
So the kind of games that you have to go to a game store for and pick up physical copies that you can now just push a button on your app and get the same thing for a lot of them.
Yes, yeah. And that's the thing too. I really wonder, like, I looked into the numbers a little bit, but does this include digital implementation? So does
I
it
don't think so.
include Arena? Like that's something
No, so
that's
because I
really-
think so ICV2 says that their numbers are based on like talking to stores,
Yeah.
and it's hobby market focused, not mass market, I believe, and because of that, I don't think it includes any digital stuff.
Yeah,
at
just
all.
the introduction of Arena. Like Arena's doing gangbusters, and I
It's
imagine
doing
that
gangbusters,
they-
and yet CCGs have gone down 14% in the last year.
Which, if you're spending your money on Arena instead of on paper Magic, then it's totally reasonable.
But if CCGs have gone down 14%, I wonder how much would a Toys R Us's closure, that probably
Yeah.
had a huge impact on that.
Yeah.
That might be part of the number.
But less on the hobby industry because they carry less hobby type games.
Yes.
Like they've got more mass production going on.
Yeah, because the hobby games are flat. Like they haven't been declining. RPGs are actually up, which isn't which is kind of understandable because we've had a lot of Kickstarter stuff, and it's also much.
We're in the
smaller.
RPG renaissance right now,
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah.
Let's
well,
just
so to
bask in
go
it.
through the categories, it was the hobby card and dice games that basically didn't budge, and that would be stuff like zombie dice, probably guillotine. Dominion might be in that category, but it was hobby board games and miniatures are both up 7%, and RPGs are up 18%. So
woo!
that's probably almost entirely D&D. Rocketing up and hopefully pulling a bunch of other games with it.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
But to look at some of these numbers too, the collectible games down 14% were still over 600 million in sales,
They're doing fine.
which is
They're
almost,
doing what they thought 6 years ago wasn't possible for them to do.
yeah, and even on that decline, it's still almost twice as much as hobby board games, which are just shy of 400 million. And then the next step down is miniatures at 270 million. And then, we have RPGs all the way down there at 65 million.
So that's the thing. The RPGs are up 18%, but that's from 55 million to 65 million, however that maths out. So it's still
10 million.
Yeah, 10 million, which is like the size of the Critical Role Kickstarter, which I believe is correct. So there's like small players can have such, and not a small player at this point, but because the industry is relatively, the RPG in particular is relatively small, like just having a big boost from one of these
RPGs are only
Kickstarters.
10%-ish of what TCGs are doing.
Yeah.
You know, and they're not even one. Or no, they're what?
But
like
the
6%
smallest
of the
piece of
overall
the
market?
pie just got bigger, guys.
Yeah.
And it's my piece, so I'm happy.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, this is an interesting topic to me because you know, backing up to people saying that, you know, board games is a bubble, it's bound to burst. Here's the thing: is Gen Con, for example. Gen Con's been around since 1968 and has grown progressively every single year. We've been around for over 50 years. I mean, that's not honestly not just a plug. It's just like the board game industry is absolutely
I think it only got
growing.
smaller one time.
Yeah, exactly.
When they moved it to a basement for a year. You
Right,
know, like,
you know, you know, my background is I'm a communications major, and I'm really interested in seeing how society interacts with each other. And with that, I think board games in general are going to be continuing to be on the rise, because as we see more and more people getting or feeling depressed, for a lack of a better term, about interacting with social media, people want a reason to interact with each other face to face again. But I think it's become a little bit more difficult the more dependent we become.
we're not allowed
on
to talk about
technology.
politics. We're not allowed to talk about religion. You get together with your friends and have a couple of drinks. You better have a board game to play, or you're going to get in a fight by the end of the night.
Sure, but I mean, you know, we're looking for reasons to interact with each other, and I think board games are a natural fit for that, right? Derek, I think last week we talked about how it gives people roles to play, especially, you know, with introverted folks who really appreciate a role to play. So I think board games, even if we're seeing decline in this area or that, I think board games are continuing to grow.
Yeah, I don't think that there's no threat, I think, to board games as a category. Like, I don't think they're going to crash or disappear. But I think the challenge that we're going to run into, and you know, this was noted in, you know, Steve Jackson releasing, you know, their statement.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on this before we left.
Yep, it was noted in AEG talking about how they're approaching games. I feel like the volume of games that are being released is making it more difficult for individual companies and individual games to find purchase and success. You know, it worries me when, you know, board game publishers talking about how a game has, you know, a 2-week release window in which to kind of prove itself before you move on, before the company has to move on. And that is sad to me, just because so few people are going to have a chance to engage with that game or see whether it really has lasting staying power before the company has to decide what to do with it. So the community, the hobby, I don't see going anywhere. But I do think that the economics of being involved in the hobby are going to continue to change pretty dramatically over the next several years, and it's uncertain where that's going to end up in a lot of cases.
And there are a couple of different companies that are saying, hey, you're making too many games.
Big companies.
Yeah.
Big companies are saying that. Small companies aren't saying that. It's weird.
Well, because they have all the small companies coming up, like flooding the market with the games. Like the big players were the ones that were there before in a lot of cases. They were making the games, they were in a good place, and now they're competing, right, with all these smaller companies, which is a little
And so
weird.
they're making big financial statements that are essentially gatekeeping these smaller companies.
Well, it is probably also worth noting that, you know, we are mentioning the Steve Jackson and AEG.
I didn't name names.
Well, I mean, like we're linking to them. Like, you know, we should have links for them in chat. We're referencing them because we know those companies. I know there's lots of independent small folks who may not be saying release fewer games, but are saying the same thing of
the market
you know,
is going to get
out
flooded.
with this game, and you know, I don't know how to distinguish it in all of these other games that have come out, because that's the challenge that's going to be facing everybody. And Kickstarter helps with that somewhat.
But you have two choices. You can either wait or do it.
Yeah, and for Kickstarter in particular, we're seeing a lot of people, like you are seeing some of the smaller indies, like saying there are so many games on Kickstarter right now, it's harder and harder to get noticed. It's interesting in the tabletop space because, like, being in the industry, being a designer in particular, one of the things we like to reiterate is, like, it's not a competition. Like, whenever we're talking to people, we're very friendly, we're very connected. You know, never will we say, like, we're fighting for purchase in this space. I think it's with the volume of games that are coming out and with this potential correction that's coming out, I think it's more focusing on product fit, on quality of games, whether that's the art or the mechanics or just like making a very solid experience, making new experiences. I think there's a lot of the games have been collected on just like doing more and more. It's like, oh, I'm going to do more CCGs. I'm just going to copy this other game. I think with this particular part of the industry being kind of full up, people are going to start moving into more like interesting and innovative
well, that's also probably
experiences.
why Asmodee opened the fiction side, so that they have another area to go explore in.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like it isn't packed there, but it's a direction to kind of take things into that they won't have the same competitors in.
Yeah, well, being a game company that doesn't go multimedia is a detriment
When you
to
reach
at
a certain
this point.
size, absolutely.
And
You have
the
to.
digital aspect as well, because we had mentioned like all the Asmodee, like these digital games that we're seeing, like the MTG Arena, like I don't think are put into these numbers. So we talk about the face-to-face and like the money and the hobby of it, but I think having digital elements and kind of going back and forth to where people are investing their money is a positive direction.
And on the note that you had of, release your game. Well, you either release it or you don't. We have a lot of games coming out. I'm really reminded of what the anime market felt to me when I was really big into it in like the late 90s, early 2000s, where everybody was super excited. More and more anime was coming out. It was the renaissance of anime because we could never had as much anime coming out as we had then. Like amazing stuff that would have been niche and never released and were gems and were beautiful were coming out. But there was also just a lot of stuff being released that was fine. And the market can only support that for so long. So I'm really curious how that correction is going to happen in board games.
Gamers play the games they like and don't play the ones they don't.
Well,
yes,
I mean,
but they also
how do you
don't play.
know-
They also don't play the ones they don't have a chance to play.
Yeah, exactly. How do you know? If I've got 10 RPGs in front of me and they all look fine and I don't know anything about them, what am I going to do?
Look at the internet and find out which ones are good from people who play them.
That's too much work.
but people have to find folks that they trust. Like there's a lot of things. I think that we as gamers are going to have to come to understand a few things. One, there are many ways to interact with a game,
Yes.
and especially for RPGs. If you want to buy the RPG and you read it and you never play it, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, I had to come to terms with that because otherwise my shelf of shame would have crushed me by now.
Yeah,
But like,
mine's pretty big too.
like that's a way to interact with it. It's okay. It's okay to buy a game and play it once if that's what you like. But if you don't like that, it's okay to not buy the new game. Like you have to. Again, like this is the same thing that happened with anime. At first, there were so few titles. You watched everything. You had to watch everything
Because you didn't know.
Yeah, because not only that, but like there was only so much to watch. You were going to get to it eventually. There were the classics. You weren't a real anime fan until you played those, and then that
Played because you're getting board games.
Yeah. So then like as you get into kind of this, more and more came out. The community kind of stuck to that feeling. And it burned a lot of people out, I think, where they felt like they had to watch everything or they weren't a real fan anymore. I think that we're definitely well into the territory with board games that like you can't say someone's not a real board game fan because they haven't played Catan. Like we all
That's
played
true.
Catan because it's what we had.
I don't play Catan.
Some people loved it, some people didn't, but like it was one of the handful of games we had. Now we have so many games, you can be a diehard board gaming fan and never have cracked Catan. Or you don't even know what deck building is. Like it's really important.
You can pick. There's so many things out there that there's probably something for you. So pick the thing you like. And
So in chat, C-Dubs has an interesting point. He says, it feels like there's also a limit to how much stock your friendly local game store can hold.
Yes.
They've got 10 RPGs out of 20, maybe. He says, and at what point...
Probably 5.
At what point do they need to start really curating these collections, right?
Well, that also reminds me of the point that Steve Jackson brought up of the Munchkin CCG came out.
Yes.
You would kind of think that that's a pretty huge slam dunk. And it came out, and it was very, very popular, and they sold out. And then they went to do another reprint, and that didn't sell anywhere near as much. So now they, by their logic, can't continue to make the game because they're sitting on inventory that was the profit that would have fueled the next expansion.
or they printed too many.
But it means that the margin is the margin for error is way, way smaller now.
Any kind of publishing, though.
You're saying, yeah, exactly. You're saying you were comparing it to anime. I think it's very similar to books, right? There is a shit ton of books out there. How do we decide what's a good book or not? How do we decide what we want to look at, what we want to read, and I think it probably comes down to Christian's point is that you look up, what other people likes what you like, right? And that's what you were saying, right? So, but I think that there is a huge opportunity right now for folks to become those reviewers, to start those blogs. I mean, yeah, it's a crap ton of time and it's a crap ton of energy, but I think, what do we have? We've got a handful of people that do it right now. I think there's more. I think there's
be
room
an
for
informative voice for people out there who want to jump onto the hobby. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
But I do find that video games and board games, because of their nature, I find different than movies and books, where I think reviews can be broadly informative, even if you don't agree with the conclusion or perspective of those, because of the way they're consumed. But I've found that the way you interact with a video game in particular and with a board game is so personal, it's very, very difficult to find a reviewer that will resonate. It's hard.
I mean, I disagree with you. I would say that the way that a lot of people interact with fiction books are very personal.
Yeah, you can have two people who like the very same book for very, very different reasons.
Sure.
Well, this is the thing you're talking about books, like the accessibility, at least for digital books, like I hardly ever buy books now. I go into the Amazon Kindle store, I download the sample, and then I never ever read that. I never see if I'm going to read the actual book.
I can't do that without just reading the whole damn book.
But there's ways to get into it, and I think with these digital versions, this is something that Asmodee is doing. Like, you can get that even if you just pop in there being like, this is good enough now, I will invest in the actual physical thing, and providing more ways. I think it's not just reviewers, like in any space reviewers can be weird, but more just tastemakers.
Yeah.
So something like, I'm not going to give the ultimate soulless breakdown for this.
Buy this for this reason.
Yeah, but I had fun doing this. I like these types of games. If you like these, then you'll like this.
You see some of that happening in video game reviews too, where I think that there was a little bit of a crisis where they were trying to figure out how a lot of publishers or news outlets were trying to figure out how to present that.
Weirdly, there's been several crises involving video game journalism over the last few years.
That's a whole other topic. I'm talking about just how to present reviews. I think many of them have gone away from it's a 9 out of 10. It's a must buy.
Yeah.
A lot of them have gone much more to these are things we like, these are things we didn't like.
It's this kind of game. If you like these kind of games, you may like it. Here are the mechanics of this kind of game that work for you.
So the other interesting kind of note that I think came out of the Steve Jackson thing that I thought was worth bringing up is that Steve Jackson, I think $800,000 was from their Kickstarters for their revenue. But that was a very, very small percentage of their overall revenue for the year. Yeah. Because I think they did several million in revenue, like 2 to 5 million. I don't recall. I don't have the notes here. But
5.3 million revenue. This note right here.
Great. I do have the note there. I just organized it poorly. So, but the thing that strikes out to me is that Kickstarter was increasingly important for them, but it was still only $800,000 of their 5.3 million. So one of the things that keeps coming up is people talk about there's too many games. Some people will bring up that if you launch a Kickstarter, I don't want to carry your game in the store because everybody who is interested in your game already bought it. And this suggests to me that that's not universally true.
It's not.
I mean, it maybe in some cases, but I don't think so. I think that the kind of game whose market is limited to its Kickstarter backers is going to be extremely rare, just because people are always going to find there's always going to be someone discovering your game after the Kickstarter.
Absolutely.
So it was interesting to me to see that kind of note of not all their money came from Kickstarter. That suggests that Kickstarter's not eating everything.
Before we started doing this show, I didn't even pay attention to Kickstarter. I'm not going to lie, and I think a lot of folks are like that, right?
Well, here's the thing, though. I mean, this is going to be a hot take, so put on your hot take pants.
Let's go.
Maybe the reason that some games don't do well after Kickstarter is just they're not that good games.
Shut the front door.
Once you get them to the table, are people getting these games to the table? If it's a good game, if you're getting it to the table, if your friends are playing it, it's the word of mouth thing, right? It's if people are enjoying this experience, then it is going to spread. They're going to be asking their local game store for it. Right. If they're not, if people aren't going into their local game store and asking for this game, then that's your problem right
While,
there.
while Kickstarter is hugely important to advertising and sales, I think ultimately, if you are trying to sell a board game, your best bet is to get hooked up with a good distributor who's going to get your game in front of people in person.
I would say distribution and your platform, your community. So there's the one
If
avenue
it
of
wasn't
like
still viable, we wouldn't have trade shows.
getting it out there, you know, having it
It's
be
true.
physically in the stores so people can see it. And then there's the thing is like, are people talking about it? Are they sharing about it? Are you making that a thing? Are you making it be an experience to be part of the meta of your
No,
game?
absolutely. That really quick though, the most successful companies who exhibit at Gen Con have plays in their booth. You can demo the game in their
Yes.
booth.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's always one of my favorite things to do.
Absolutely believe that if you have a good game, the best way to sell that game is to let people. If you have a good product, the best way to sell that product is to let people interact with it.
Yeah.
And in a game, that means play it. In a book, that means read it.
Yeah.
As a movie, it means
See
you
it.
know, yeah,
I know this
see
one.
part of it. So like, you know, whether that's at a convention or not, whether you know that could be at a convention or it could be working with the distributor so that the stores have demo copies
Yeah.
and they know how to play them. Like
Yeah.
that will sell games when they're good.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's really important when you do a Kickstarter to have the gameplay video online, to have the tabletop simulator version you can try out, to have a print and play that you can play,
Yeah.
to while your Kickstarter's running, go to conventions and let people
Yeah. Absolutely.
interact with it.
Play, yeah.
To Emma's point, Valafor, is that how you pronounce your name? I hope so. Valafor. Okay,
Valafor.
great. I'm trying, man. I'm trying. Valafor says Wingspan came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So to your community point, people started talking about it. People were like, "This is a freaking awesome game."
Yes.
And it spread and spread and spread. And guess what? Now they're saying that at their local game store, they've got like 60 people
Well, I mean, the same thing
on
kinda
back
happened with-
order,
Yeah, yeah.
waiting for this game.
Yeah.
Well, like
So-
Board Game Geek can drive a lot of attention.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I always think about the surge in Cards Against Humanity. Like when that first came out, nobody knew what it was, and then everybody knew what it was
Yep.
and needed
And now
it right
everyone's
then
trying
and
to
there.
copy it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's not my
but
game.
nobody wants to admit that they play it anymore.
There.
I can't say as I blame them.
All right.
good.
Well,
So
that.
yeah, I mean, like, there's a lot of interesting questions going on. Like, we obviously have not solved every problem that the industry will face over the next 10 years at this table, but like these
Haven't
are all.
we?
It's true, we
I
have.
feel
I
like
think we have.
I
I
feel
think-
accomplished.
I think, yeah, I have a sense of
We've at
accomplishment
least done
today.
enough that we should
Nailed
get
it.
trophies.
I think maybe
Yeah.
we saved the entire gaming industry.
Yeah. I think that's what we're doing.
We are available
One show
as
at a
paid
time.
contractors for anything.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Marketing.
Maybe.
But I think these are all questions that I think folks who really love games should be thinking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because this is what the people who are making the games they love are thinking about. And
But you don't always want to know how the sausage is made.
no, but it is worth like just reminding yourself, like, if you love new games, get them. But if you don't have to, it's like
Yeah.
the fear of missing out for nerds is really strong, and sometimes it's okay. Like, there are too many games to play them all now, so come to terms with that.
Yeah.
And think about what kind of games do you want to play, because
What-
then
yeah,
you
what
will
do
be
you like?
you will
Yeah.
be happier if you play the games you want to play because you like them, not because you felt like you had to play all the games to be the right kind of gamer.
Right.
makes
Absolutely.
sense.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think there's any hard and
100%.
fast rules to being a gamer anymore. And frankly, I'm down with that.
100%.
Agreed.
All right, guys. I think that's all we got time for today. This has been TableTakes presented by Gen Con. My name is Christian. This is Kristen. This is Emma. That is Derek. And we've been your hosts today. Thanks for tuning in. And we will see you next Friday. Same Gen Con time, same Gen Con channel.
See ya.